Hello friends, I know that right now you are going to be starting your essay, and so today I'm going to talk about how to basically put it all together, from your opening lines to your final statements in your concluding paragraph. I'm going to show you from start to finish how to build an essay that will work for you every time. I'm going to give you a skeleton that you can sort of throw the meat onto. So even those of you who are really nervous about writing, take a deep breath. I'm going to give you some strategies, some steps to follow that are going to take the difficulty out of this for the most part. I think so. I hope so. When I was a young professor just starting out, I was young at one point. It was probably 2 or 3 semesters into my career that I really figured out what students were saying. I had students who would come in and very scared about writing and would say, I can't do it. I failed English in the past. This is my second or third attempt to take it. I just can't do it. And I couldn't figure out what the it was. And I thought about that for a while, and I realized what they were saying was in math, for example, you just take the numbers and throw them into a formula and you get the right answer every time. Same with chemistry. If you put together certain things, you're going to end up with the same result every time. And the fear for students in English is, English is very artsy, and it can be way out there with the symbols and the layers of meaning and all this stuff. And students sometimes struggle with trying to be right, trying to find the right answer. I want to be right. And sometimes it's not that easy getting to the conclusion, getting to where you want to be. And so once I realized that's what the it was, then I decided from that point on, okay, I know what my job is. My job is to demystify this process, to take out the part that feels like a magic trick that only some people can do and the rest just have to kind of just sit and watch. I don't believe that. I think anyone can do this. You don't have to be Shakespeare to be a good writer and to write a complete, cogent, well thought out, polished essay. Yeah, I'm talking to you, scared of writing. We can do this. In fact, let me show you. A lot of my colleagues try and make this very difficult. I think they just want you to appreciate how much goes into writing. And that there's some truth there. I get what they're doing. But rather than buy you an entire, or force you to buy an entire book about writing an essay, this is a page from my binder that I usually have with me in class. It's my lecture notes. It's my script that I follow. When it comes to structuring an essay, how to write an essay, this is it. One page out of my binder to show you how to write an essay. So in just a handful of simple steps for you to follow, I'm going to show you how to build your essay, how to take what you have up here, because you know what you want to say and what you want to write about. Now it's about plugging it into a formula to give you the nice polished end result that you're going to be handing in to me. And this is going to include even basic questions. Sometimes I discovered students were a little bashful. I would go through my entire lecture about how to build the essay, and I'd get one little hand go up, and the student would ask, well, how long does this have to be? Or how long does this part have to be? And they were embarrassed to ask because they felt like that was I don't know, like an immature question. It didn't feel like a very college question, because in college we deal with bigger global questions of ideas and philosophies and arguments and things like that. And so a question like, well, how long does a paragraph have to be, can sound silly, and they're embarrassed to ask. Don't be embarrassed to ask, because those big global questions are important, but so are the big questions of form and function. I mean, you need to know how long things are. So I'm even going to talk about that in today's lecture. So we're going to get this knocked out pretty quickly. Before we do anything, the single most important part of writing an essay, I'm going to say this, if we were in person, I would be saying this every week to you until you're so sick of hearing it, you just want to strangle me. But the most important part of your essay is your thesis statement. What are you saying, and what are you going to say about it? This one single sentence statement, could be 2 sentences, but even one will get the job done, and I'll show you how. But you need this one single statement to anchor your entire paper together. It's the roadmap you're handing to your reader, and you're saying, okay, no surprises here, this is what you're going to get, this is what you're going to be reading about. And without that, your entire paper falls apart. It's the one single thread that keeps everything together and keeps all of your arguments focused all the way to your concluding statements where you wrap it all up for your reader. I had a student hand in a paper to me once, and if you read it, you would agree it was beautifully written. I mean, it was polished. The language was just scholarly, and the flow of the paper, there were no problems with punctuation. The sentences all just ran together flawlessly. Beautiful paper. And if you took a look at each paragraph, each one was just exquisitely crafted. It was wonderful. It looked like an A paper. However, it didn't get the A that the writer probably thought he deserved, and that was because there was no thesis statement. There was nothing. So what I got was just a collection of really beautifully written paragraphs that had nothing to do with each other. They weren't connected. By the time I got to the end of the paper, I didn't know what it was this writer wanted me to think or to believe or to do at the end of this paper. I had no idea. And that was because there was no central argument. There wasn't a case being made. There was no argument presented in paragraph 1 that let me know, oh, this is where he's going. And since he didn't have that, he didn't know where he was going either. So his ideas were just all over the place. And so he didn't get the grade he thought he was going to get, and that's because that one important piece was missing. In fact, when I get your essays, the first thing I look at, I don't even look at the names of the people on the essay. My eye goes straight for the thesis statement to make sure it's there because I want to know what I'm getting into. I'll get to the end of the paper before I realize, oh, Kelsey wrote that, or oh, that's Tony's essay. I don't care about that. I am number one thing I look for. I'm going straight for your thesis statement. And so there's something I want you to remember. I want you to lock it in here for life because this is a tool that you can use not just in my class, but in any other class that asks you to do writing, and even in your careers. Even though most of you are not English majors, your career is going to require some really solid writing out of you. And you need to be able to take what's going on in here and sum it up for someone who doesn't have a whole lot of time to read. All right, so this is what I want you to remember about thesis statements. The 3 T's of the thesis. To easily generate a thesis statement that works each and every time, I want you to think of the 3 T's of writing your thesis. So the complete thesis statement is divided into 2 parts. You need a topic, that's what you're writing about, and your treatment, and that's what you're saying about it. Those are the pieces of your argument, is what's inside your treatment. And you'll see there in parentheses I put a little ×3. That's because in a standard 5-paragraph essay you need at least 3 talking points, right? Because that'll give you 3 body paragraphs, and then you add on your intro and your conclusion, and you have your standard 5-paragraph format. So this is what you need to write a thesis. 3 is kind of a magic number, and you're going to see it quite often in English. Especially when it comes to creating enough evidence to support your argument. And that's because 1 of anything is just random, it's not enough. 2 of something is a coincidence. But 3 establishes a pattern. So every essay is going to require at least 3 body paragraphs, maybe even more. Now you can see in blue there I wrote Elvis is the king of rock and roll. If anyone in my life who knows me even a little bit knows that Elvis is the king of my world anyway. But let's say this is what I wanted to write my essay about. Elvis is the king of rock and roll. Is this a strong enough thesis statement, do you think? Well, probably not. I'm on the way. I've got my topic, Elvis is the king of rock and roll, but clearly I'm missing my treatment. You don't know what it is I'm going to say about him. I haven't given you the roadmap of my essay. If I take this one step further and I add this next little bit, Elvis is the king of rock and roll because of his music, his style, and his influence. Now I have an essay. Now you know what I'm writing about and you know what I'm going to say about my subject in order to try and convince you to see Elvis Presley the same way that I do. In fact, just to keep playing with this example a little bit more, I gave you my 3 talking points: the music, the style, and the influence. If I wanted to, I can even just show you, break it down, what each of those paragraphs might look like. So talking about his music, I might address his hit records, the fact that he was one of the founding fathers of rock and roll when rock music was in the first years of its development. And he sort of helped shape teen identities. Meaning before rock and roll came along, there really wasn't an industry devoted toward teenagers' interests. So Elvis sort of helped teenagers become a recognized group of Americans. His style, I might talk about his distinctive hairstyle, his clothing, his dance moves. Of course, if you've seen Elvis move, he was all over the place. He was nicknamed Elvis the Pelvis. And in fact, one of the first times he was ever singing on TV, the cameraman had to film him from the waist up because they didn't want young girls seeing what he was doing from the waist down. And finally, if I wanted to talk about his influence, I could talk about how he influenced future artists, how they copied his sound and style. I can talk about how he's become such a cultural icon. He's known by only one name. If I say Elvis, you know who I'm talking about. So once you have established your roadmap, and I would think that's probably the hardest part, but I think once you know what you want to say and what you're going to say about it, that sort of clears the path for everything in front of you. So once you have your idea, you have your topic and your treatment, and you're ready to go, let's take a look at what it looks like putting these together into an essay format that's going to work for you. All right, I know some of you might be visual learners, so I'm setting this up in a very visual way as well as just a straightforward way, so hopefully this will benefit all of you. But your intro paragraph, that's your first paragraph of your essay, you can think of as sort of an upside down triangle, and I'll explain why in just a second. So your introduction should be about 5 to 10 sentences, and this is how you can easily get to that point. First, you need to hook your reader. You want to do something that is going to grab a reader's attention to keep them reading. There are a few different ways you can do this. You can start by asking a question. That's really effective. Some professors don't like it, so listen to instructions for those particular professors. I don't mind it at all. When you start with a question, you are engaging your reader because they are formulating their own response and they're reading ahead to know what you're going to say. You can also start with a quote that has something to do with the story or the character. You can start with a quote from one of the characters. Because you are focusing on a narrator, you can start with a character sketch. You can sort of describe what kind of person they are. You can bring them to life for your reader so they have an image of them in their minds. You can start with a shocking story, whatever you want to do, but you want to do something to grab your reader by the collar and yank them into your argument. The next thing you want to do is give your reader context, and that's just a fancy word for showing your reader the bigger picture. Now, other classes will require other kinds of context, but for us, we're talking about stories. And so for your intro, you want to make sure and include the title of the story you're talking about, the author, and a brief summary of the story. Give a little description of the story's main points. You don't have to say everything because your argument is going to cover that. But you do want to give them enough of some backstory, enough of a little summary, so that as your reader reads along, they have an idea of what they're getting into. If they have no idea what the story is about or what's happening, then they're going to get lost in your argument. And finally, you are going to conclude your intro paragraph with your thesis statement. And again, I'm going to drill this in. This is your topic and your treatment. You want to make sure that this is where you end your intro paragraph. Make sure it ends with your thesis statement. As I said before, when I get your essay submitted, that's the first thing my eye goes to. I want to make sure that I see that thesis before I see anything else. So I told you there was a reason why I'm presenting this as a triangle shape. And that's because at the top of it, you're presenting all the broad general information like context and all that stuff. And you're bringing it down to a fine point in your thesis statement. So you're going to be ending it, making sure that you tell your reader what you're going to be writing about and what you're saying about it. You want to make your position on the topic perfectly clear before you dive into your argument. Something else you may have noticed along the edge of my triangle here, I wrote that you are writing for a stranger. I know you're writing this for me. You know it, I know it. I know who the characters are. I know what the stories are all about. But the thing is, when you're writing your paper, I want you to imagine that you are writing this for someone outside of our class, or a friend of yours, or a family member, someone who has absolutely no idea the weird stuff that we're talking about in here. The reason this is important is because that's going to force you to slow down a little bit and make sure that you really are giving enough clear details about setting and character and plot, so that a complete stranger can pick up your essay and follow it along from beginning to end without getting lost. That's really important. So you don't want to just launch into your essay and start talking about Mr. Wilson without explaining who he is and what's happening to him. And you can't just write about side characters and how they connect to the main character without explaining how do they know each other? Who is Jane? Who is Mike? Who is David? Who are these names that you're just throwing out there? So if you're writing for a stranger, that's going to force you to slow down and say, oh, David, the narrator's brother, or what have you, right? So write for a stranger. And don't just think of that for English class. Do that for any essay that you were asked to write. Imagine you're writing it for someone who has no idea what class you're taking, what you're doing. Pretend your professor's a stranger, and it's your job to convince your professor to see things your way. Once your intro paragraph is out of the way, now you can focus on your argument. This is the main part of your essay. This is the part where you are going to be convincing your reader to believe in something or do something. So this is what goes into each of your body paragraphs, and each one should be about 12 to 15 sentences. And if that sounds long, remember, you've already done this for me once before. That was good practice. So you know what goes into a nice solid paragraph. But for an essay, here's what you're going to want to focus on. At the beginning of your body paragraph, introduce your subtopic. So what is the first part of your treatment you're going to be talking about? If I go back to my Elvis example, the first thing I mentioned was his music. So my first body paragraph will be about his music. All right, so you want to be consistent, and you want your body paragraphs to be in the same order in which you presented your subtopics in your treatment. Right, the next thing you're going to do in your body paragraph is give supporting evidence. And you want to try for 3 if you can. Sometimes you won't have that much, and that's okay. But give your evidence. It could be in the form of a quote from the text. It could be a quote from a character. It could be a scene. You can describe the scene. But whatever it is, you want to give your evidence. What is it you want your reader to see? And right after that, before you end your body paragraph, you want to analyze or explain that evidence. Why is it important? Why did you choose that? What is it you want your reader to see? Why does it matter? And next to this, I wrote 3 times there in red in the parentheses. I wrote times 3. And that's because, obviously, you're going to have 3 talking points in your treatment, so that's going to give you 3 body paragraphs. Remember, for this essay or any essay you write, a body paragraph is devoted to one subtopic only. You don't want a giant paragraph that's talking about 2 or 3 different big ideas, right? You want to separate those. Most essays, you're just required to do 3 body paragraphs. As our semester rolls along, you'll probably have to do more in order to say everything you want to say. Don't try and cram it all into 3 body paragraphs. Just add more. If you have more to say, add more paragraphs. Finally, after you've created your intro paragraph and you've written your 3 body paragraphs to support your argument, it brings you to your concluding paragraph. And you can see I drew this in a big circle because you are quite literally closing the loop on your argument. You're bringing your argument to a full, complete circle. And standing back here and looking at the circle I drew, I promise I'm not drinking. I'm not an art major, so I drew the best big circle I could. Your conclusion, the good news is, does not have to be very long, just about 4 to 8 sentences. And that's because your essay has already done the heavy lifting for you. So we're just bringing it to a close. Now, the first couple things you've probably been told before in high school. You probably know this already. In your last paragraph, you're not introducing any new ideas. So don't get to your last paragraph and be like, oh, I forgot to mention one other thing. No, don't do that. If you have another subtopic, another idea you want to discuss, put that into your essay. Give it its own paragraph. So don't bring anything new at the very end. The second thing I know you probably know already is you want to restate your thesis, but you want to do it in a fresh way that reinforces your message. So don't just copy and paste your thesis from page 1, because that's repetitive. It's pointless. It doesn't serve you to mention your thesis in paragraph 1, spend 3 paragraphs defending it, and then repeat it in your conclusion. I already know it. You don't have to say it again. But how can you say it in a new way that brings your entire argument together? Which leads me to my next thing, and this is maybe something you haven't thought of before, but your conclusion is more than just wasted space on a paper, right? It's not just busy work. Your conclusion has to do something important. And so this is what I want you to consider for the rest of your life whenever you write an essay. Your final paragraph is answering some form of the very simple question, so what? In other words, what do you want your reader to do, or what do you want them to believe? Now, for this first essay, obviously, you're trying to convince a jury to do something to your narrator, either send them to prison or send them away to get the help they desperately need. So you want your reader to be doing one of those two things. So it might help you from this point going forward in your college career. You should probably think about that final question first before you even start your essay, because this will help give you a goal to shoot toward, right? So what? What do you want your reader to do or believe? And as far as constructing your essay, that's really it. That was my 1 page of notes. That's it. Some of you who are stronger writers, who were pretty good at English and have no problem sitting down and writing something out, you might see this and think, God, that feels very rigid to me, very confining, very prescriptive. That's okay. If you're a more confident writer, I just want you to see this as a guide. And if you want to color outside of the lines a little bit in your own unique and creative ways, I am wide open to experimenting with writing. I am wide open to the idea of taking risks if you feel confident. If you want to do that, that is fine. Use that as a guide. For the rest of you who are still kind of nervous about getting the job done, I tried to move the dots as closely as possible for you, so just follow this format. Follow my advice even down to the letter. I don't care. You can follow it as closely as you want. Whatever helps you get the job done. But I wanted you to see, if you were scared before, it's just a process. It's an equation, just like in math class. Just plug in your ideas and you are good to go. There will be a sample posted, so don't forget to take a look at that. The sample is written by a student just like you, responding to the exact same essay prompt that you are. We were reading a different story by Edgar Allan Poe. So it's still similar enough. It can give you a good idea of what the finished product should look like. Before you leave here today, though, I want to show you just a couple of quick outlines. Some of you are going to be writing about one character. Maybe some of you want the challenge of writing about all 3 narrators, whatever the case may be. I'm going to show you how to set up your paper in both ways. So I'll do that really quickly before I let you go. I just wanted to show you a sample outline. Now, some of you might not work with outlines. You just like to hit the ground running with that blank laptop screen in front of you, and that's totally fine. We all work in different ways. But for those of you who are a little nervous and you want me to hold your hand a little bit as we go deeper into the pool, this is one way you can make this even easier, is to follow an outline. So if you're writing about one character from one story, this is a really simple way you can plug in the pieces here. Obviously, your intro, you have your hook, your context, and your thesis. So who it is you're writing about and what it is you're saying about them. What is it you want your jury to believe? Once you have your argument in mind, when you know what side you're on and what you're trying to convince the jury to do or believe, now we can get going. And you can see each of the body paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 are the definition of our insanity. I'm going to pause here for just a second because I want to give you a pro tip from me to you. Whenever a professor hands you an essay prompt, look for the number 3 in it. You might not see the number 3, but your professor might present you a question that's divided up into 3 parts. There's a little clue there. You can turn each one of those into your 3 body paragraphs. So in a way, the outline is already done for you. Now, if you remember on your essay prompt that I gave you the definition of insanity, which is made up of 3 parts. Each one of those parts you can explain, you can explore in depth in your essay, and that gives you your 3 body paragraphs, which is exactly how I set it up here. Sometimes you won't always have that luxury and you're going to have to come up with 3 talking points, but sometimes the structure is handed right to you. I did that on purpose. So in my first body paragraph, I'm going to be looking at the fantasy versus reality. So I'm going to introduce that subtopic. I'm going to show my evidence or my clues to convince my reader what it is I want them to see, whether this person is insane or not insane. And then I'm going to analyze and explain that evidence. Why is it important? What do I want my reader to see in that? My next body paragraph is about right and wrong, and I'm going to do the same thing there. And then my last body paragraph is whether or not my character can or cannot control their behavior, and I'm going to do the same 3 things in that body paragraph. Finally, in my conclusion, because I'm trying to convince a jury, I'm going to use my conclusion as sort of my closing arguments. You've seen them do that on TV and court shows and movies and stuff. So I'm going to give them a summary of the facts, which is just a way of restating my thesis in a new way to help lead them to a conclusion. And then finally, I have to convince them of the so what. What is it I want my jury to do or believe? Now, obviously, for this paper, you want your jury to either send them to prison or send them to a mental institution. So make sure it's very clear at the end of your paper what you want your jury to do. Finally, for those of you who might want to tackle the more challenging idea of either prosecuting or defending all 3 of our narrators, this is how you can set this up. Remember, if you choose to do that, you can't separate them. So you can't send 2 to prison and 1 to a mental institution, right? You're either prosecuting all 3 of them the same way or you are defending all 3 of them the same way. So it's all or nothing. Your first paragraph is your intro. Nothing changes there. Your first body paragraph, you're just going to take the stories in order. Telltale Heart, you're going to run that narrator through our formula here, and you're going to talk about the fantasy versus reality, the right versus wrong, whether they can or cannot control their behavior, and then make sure and analyze that character, put it all together before you end that paragraph. Right, your next body paragraph will be about yellow wallpaper, and same thing there. You're going to take that narrator and you're going to run her through that filter, and then in part D you're going to explain, is she sane or insane, whatever the argument is that you're making for your characters. Again, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, you just run that guy through the same 4 pieces there. And then in your conclusion, nothing changes there. Restate your overall case, right? You're restating your thesis, the facts of the case, and what's your so what? What do you want your jury to do to these characters? Send them off to prison together or send them off to a mental institution? All right, friends, one last little bit of advice before I leave you today is about what voice you want to use in your essay. If you just want to write a straightforward essay about the character, whether or not they're sane or insane, and what should happen to them, that's absolutely fine. Straightforward academic essay where you are not a character in it is totally fine. So you're not writing to convince a jury, you're just writing a persuasive, convincing, scholarly paper. That's absolutely fine. You're going to see, though, In the sample that I put up, written by a student who's talking about another Edgar Allan Poe story, he decided to take on the voice of a lawyer. And he's talking about his client, he's talking directly to the jury. So in that sense, the writer himself became a character, right? He's in the courtroom and he's addressing all the people there. Presumably you are one of the jurors that he is talking to. If you'd like to do that, if you want to have fun with that and you want to be someone in the courtroom, that is absolutely fine. This is our first essay. This is just meant to get us in kind of the writing zone, get used to writing in a particular format, responding to a story using evidence. So this is our first time out. So if you want to have some fun with this, kind of, if that helps you relax a little bit about this, this is absolutely fine. So you can write a straightforward essay, or you can become a character in the essay where you are an active participant in the trial. Either way is absolutely fine with me. Of course, if you have any questions along the way, I am an email away. I am happy to help you. I'm happy to coach you through this. If you're just freaking out at some point and you just need a big fat cheerleader to give you an attaboy or attagirl or help you get unstuck, you know where to reach me. You know where to find me, and I'm right here. But have fun with this one. The stories, I think, were fairly simple. I think the format I gave you today, if you follow the steps, can make it hopefully a little easier for you to get the job done, as well as some other videos I'll be posting to help you with the little detail work and how to read your own work with a fine-tooth comb, go over it in really good detail on your own. But it's all there to help you. So until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye, 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 bye.